brand new. They ordered it.
So originally, we had put this community choice aggregation program up first, thinking that we would have somebody speak to us from, that program, talk about that, but he wasn't able to make it.
Well, can we still touch on it?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so-
I was gonna say therefore,
Okay.
the one person that's really had a lot of conversation is you, so.
So there's two things going on there with community choice aggregation. Number one, the person that you're talking about, Rob Richardson, is with the Genesee Finger Lakes Planning and Association. It's not the association. It's the one that helps with coordination of all of our clean energy community and climate smart community designations. So the town of Canandaigua currently probably has enough points to qualify for the bronze level, which is one of the lowest levels. And it's all done by points, the different things that we've done. There's 4 strategic action items that you have to do to actually get the designation. We've already completed those action items. And then as we do more things, like for instance, even saving money on electricity or cleaning or switching over to LED lights, there's different point systems that you can get. The reason why you go along and you play this game with the state of New York is because the more points you get and the higher designation you get, there's a whole series of grants that open up to only these communities that meet these designations. So the city of Canandaigua was a bronze community. They're actually getting ready to be certified as a silver community. One of the things they did to do that is pass the stretch code, the New York stretch code, which gets them a whole nother tier level of different things and different opportunities. And I don't know that we want to go down that road, but we're very close to the bronze level. And for instance, we already have many more points than Victor, Farmington, and we really are one of the leaders in the things that we've already done. That becomes important for things like when we get to the point of having conversations about the streetlight conversion of 332 and all of that stuff, because then there's all kinds of additional opportunities that open up to us. Community choice aggregation specifically is one of those areas where it's like 1,000 points if we do that. Community choice aggregation is a regulatory only initiative. It would be a matter of the town board adopting a local law that would require community choice aggregation in the town of Canandaigua. And so basically what that would do is that would say, okay, the town of Canandaigua is making the decision that collectively we can get a better deal on electric costs for all of our residents by passing this law, which is also green energy law, and going that route versus everybody kind of doing it on their own. And then the individuals could opt out of it if they so chose to opt out of it. And there's company like Rock City, Rock City, that does all of this. They're actually who did the city of Canandaigua's. At some point we'll want to hear from them and have some more in-depth, but that's probably like 2 or 3 meetings down the road. This is not something I don't think that we want to rush into, but on the other hand, it does elevate us to open up a whole new series of grant windows and stuff if we were to do this by getting the points for the CCA. So,
So for example,
mhm.
you get something from these power companies saying you want to opt in for 15% of your energy to come from windmill or something like that. So you're saying you make that a law within the town? that
Right.
you
So what's
opt in for something like
what's
that?
essentially different about this, and this is where the controversy comes in with it too, is you make the decision on behalf of the town board, makes the decision on behalf of all the residents of the town of Canandaigua. So it's automatically you're in unless you opt
Unless
out.
you opt out.
Right. So that's the different
Yeah.
piece of this. So there was a little bit of controversy when the city first did it. The city was one of the very first ones to do it. And I think we've learned a lot since then. Victor switched and is a CCA now also, even though ironically they haven't done a lot of the other initiatives, so we still have more points than them. But and they did it a lot less controversial. I think it was a course of everybody learning, and Rock City did it for them. But it's all about the collective purchasing power of all of these communities going in together and getting a better rate for the residents. And then if you choose to opt out or go with something else, everybody always has that option. Anyway, so.
What kind of savings do people realize? I mean,
That's one of the things that I want Rock City, because that's one that, so when they first came to the city of Canandaigua, we were having normal conference calls, Johnny Goodwin and myself, with them. And I said, what's the actual number? I kept saying over and over and over, and nobody could give it to me. So finally, truthfully, I stopped going to the meetings, because I'm like, until somebody can give me an actual number, this seems like smoke and mirrors. Well, the city council wanted to proceed with it anyway, but I couldn't get any tangible numbers. Now they have historical data numbers, is what I'm told, and that they will come and present that to us and go over that. But that's why I wanted it to come through a committee, obviously like this, so that we could have those conversations and stuff.
so this Rock City, they did Canandaigua and Victor?
Yes.
Others also, or just?
Yes. No.
Those
those
had
others.
some
Yeah.
other communities that-
Yeah.
Have you heard at all about number of people that stay in versus out, or?
It's, from what I understand, way over 95% stay in.
Stay in? And the power all comes from renewable
Yes.
sources like wind or solar?
Yes. Combination.
What do they do when the wind's not blowing and the sun isn't shining?
Well, I think
What happens?
Well, it's off the grid.
Yeah, it's
so,
off
you
the
know,
grid.
all
Oh, yeah,
mixed
It's
together.
credits, right?
But do you
It's not a problem.
do you still experience that same rate per kilowatt hour, or does it revert? Yeah, I can.
Right. No, it's,
You have to have them come in and.
right, exactly. But supposedly, no, it's a very stable rate. There's no peaks or craziness.
Sounds like a franchise.
Well, so Rock City is actually like a not-for-profit organization that has actually helping municipalities do that for our area. There's other groups in other places around the state. Rob can talk about that from a more statewide perspective in terms of these different entities. But the one here for the Rochester area that's been working
So it would be exclusive though,
for our area,
for our,
for our Finger Lakes, our nine-county
and
Finger Lakes.
town of
region.
Canandaigua would join Victor and the city, and you'd be part of that alliance.
Yes.
So that, again, there's more value in numbers.
Yeah, and it's all based on essentially contracts. So, and that was one of the things I was talking about with Rob, is whether or not we can piggyback on the rate that's already been established for instance, Victor and Canandaigua, or whether or not we would have to go out to bid on our own. But he said he thought we could piggyback, which they have a lower rate, and then when theirs comes up again in, I think it's 22 or 23, so it's relatively soon, we could join if we're in rate, if we're already at that.
And it should be lower, well, all things being equal, it should be lower.
Right.
Because you have more homes.
Correct.
Power, please.
The other day, I've gotten these before, thing in the mail for RG&E customers, Delaware River Solar.
Yep.
They guarantee the 5%, 5%, it's, the way it's worded, you're not getting 5% off the bill, it's 5% off the cost of solar, wind, all that, which could be higher, could be lower, I mean, you don't know.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But being recycled tomorrow.
Well, what you are hearing, Terry, as these solar farms go up,
Yeah,
people say, hey, I'm not seeing any benefit of this. I mean, I gotta look at these things, but I haven't seen anything locally that's beneficial.
Right.
So
Right.
maybe they can-
Well, what's also interesting is there's a lot of, so like for instance, even with the CSC credits, like for instance, the Creekview Apartments project, that was a completely green energy type of a project. We're actually, and Sarah's working on submitting the information for us. We're able to get the points for them doing that in the town of Canandaigua, the solar projects. We're able to get the points for that. A lot of the 3-story apartment buildings that I'm working with for Uptown for affordable housing, those are net zero buildings with solar panels on the roofs and everything. And so we would be able to get the credits for all of that. So for the town itself. And so then as we get those, and I know that this really gets into the weeds, but as we get those credits, the more points we have, it opens up new windows that are reserved. It's the way the state plays the game. It's the way the state incentivizes the municipalities. Oh, we want you to do this, and if you do this, then we'll let you apply for this.
well, they're just driving towards,
Right.
green energy. mean, that's the whole thrust.
So you
Otherwise-
mentioned,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. You mentioned grants up front. What can you use the grants for besides the street lighting? So anything energy related?
Yeah, or reducing our energy, or promoting renewable energy, anything. Even like from what I understand, transfer station related stuff would come into that. Obviously, we operate, I think it's 7 different lighting districts. There's all those lighting districts. The 332 lights are actually a part of the town's general fund, and that's a whole separate thing. There's a dire need there, but anyway, so,
Yeah, there's,
yeah, so, whole variety of different things.
Okay. So,
Meanwhile, just on the streetlights, because that's not on the agenda while we're talking about that. As part of our conversation we were having with Rob Richardson, the city of Canandaigua converted all their streetlights using performance matrix. And so we're gonna talk with a company that did that. However, asterisk, the town and city, through our LDC, we had just qualified as a finalist for the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. We're going after a $20 million state grant that includes uptown, downtown, the lakefront. As part of all that, there's a whole variety of clean energy initiatives associated with that, including EV charging stations that the state is looking at that area, uptown, downtown, lakefront, and also possible complete replacement of all those streetlights all the way down to the lakefront, and really the connecting of all of that. So there's a lot of moving pieces of the puzzle right now, and we'll see how the puzzle comes together, but there's a variety of different things. The 332 streetlights, I mean, if you drive by and look at those, there's a dire need there. I mean, the poles or the paint's coming off of them, they look terrible. The Uptown study called for replacing those and even having like banners and stuff. Meanwhile, the LDC is doing wayfinding signage for us that includes looking at banners on light poles to give more of a continuous feeling all the way down through the community. And then, in addition to that, there's this whole thing with the DRI. So I think we're going to be talking about those lights for probably a few months here. 330.
Jim's been talking about you're trying to replace them, the aluminum shroud and the stainless steel. You can't get those bolts out to get in and work on them.
I just talked to Jim yesterday, and we were talking about just replacing bulbs right now for the ones that, as we figure out the rest of this.
Yeah, well, especially if this DRI is going to come along. From what you said, it sounds very encouraging. So.
Well, and what's very, very unique about the streetlights and some of the technologies, and Greg, I don't know if you've experienced this, but it's amazing what streetlights can do nowadays. They can provide Wi-Fi. They can detect, like for instance, gunshots and automatically dispatch police. They can sense atmospheric conditions and share that information and report back weather. They can provide security cameras and all of that stuff, all built right in. Plus, one of the things that we've been talking about is they can provide point-of-touch systems and sharing information. They also, and just what would look like a normal street light, a lot of the newer lights with the LED are programmable so that you can have different hues of lights and colors and everything else. So, for instance, one of the things that we've been talking about is connection of uptown all the way to the lakefront. How do you make that corridor all feel like it's part of one continuous kind of like district? And you can do that even through like lighting or, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Imagine if there were pink backlights on the light poles so that in recognition of breast cancer awareness, all those types of different things. So talking about lots of technology.
Makes you wonder whether we need those in our signs.
No, that's a whole nother story.
I don't know who's gonna see them anyway. So sit back.
Well, maybe we could try again next month to invite Rob to come and talk to us, and he's just kind of a middleman.
Right. He helps the municipalities.
Yeah, but you need to go beyond him.
Right. Yeah.
So we have him come in next month and make a presentation and we can make a recommendation and to the town board maybe for the December meeting or something like that, so. Okay.
Do you want me to coordinate that with Rob?
Sure.
Yeah, if you could, yeah, that'd be great. Caitlin.
Clean energy community school.
Caitlin, the other day you said that you had some information from the city regarding costs. You were talking, or from someplace.
I also met with Rob separately, about the climate smart communities, information. Sarah and I met with Rob a few weeks ago. So he was as part of, cause this is a high point item for the climate smart communities. So he was just talking about,
I was supposed to be in the meeting. That's the day you and I went to Steve Lacrosse funeral.
Oh.
That was.
so he just kind of talked a little bit, mostly what Doug said, that we can kind of piggyback with the city and have a larger pool of people and potentially get an even lower rate for our residents. But, I believe he said they're saving about 1 cent per kilowatt hour currently over the RG&E rate.
Okay. I was just listening to Lansbury coming in over here for this meeting. He was talking overnight, I can't remember, the company in Buffalo is principal supplier of natural gas. The one in Rochester, they said the rates are going up 43% and 31% respectively for the rest of the year and into next year. So home heating costs are gonna take a leap like this.
40%?
43, yeah.
31 is that?
Versus last year, so, they said the people that are gonna need help, that pool is probably gonna grow, and, with numbers like that, then a lot of our power comes from, burning natural gas, so what do you think that's gonna do to the electric power cost? It's gonna go up, so it's appropriate to be discussing this.
So just so I can let Rob know what we want to discuss with him, we want to talk about the CCA and I assume the climate smart communities.
He
as
knows.
well.
I just met with him last week.
Well, I need to leave, go cut some firewood.
You'll have to be putting a metal post up for your trail camp because you cut the trees down. Any other comments on this or?
That's good.
Transfer station planning, we put this on here just to, I don't know if there's anything you want to talk about other than having seen pictures of the elk that Ty got out Montana, I guess it was. Bragged about that high. Everything's still pretty much the same there. Hopefully after perhaps after early November, Board of Supervisors may have more to say about what they think should happen going forward, and then maybe we can start planning. I did tell at our last town board meeting, I said that we had discussed the hanging tags and decided rather than buy new ones, to just leave, what we have, the orange ones for next year. Maybe by then we'll have some better method, or we'll know where we're going, so maybe put an electronic sign up and say the tags are good for another year or something, as we get into November or December. Not a big cost item, but it's a few $1,000, so.
At the town board meeting coming up, I would anticipate the town board adopting the budget. The budget has the new full-time person in the transfer station too.
Yeah.
I talked to Kathy briefly yesterday. She was asking me a couple of questions, but I didn't sense any objection.
Okay. Well, be defining what that person does. You guys, I'm sure you'll find
We'll
something.
get closer to that time and we'll figure something out.
Yeah. Okay.
The hours stay the same. Keeping the hours the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, for now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is part of the discussion that should we open it up on some fully open or part of the transfer station, whatever, I mean, that's still to be defined, but at least there's a placeholder in the budget for another full-time person. I'm not getting any younger either, so. Before we go on to the sanitary sewer discussion, another water breakdown in the same area, we had one a few weeks ago, right?
It's old.
Huh?
It's old.
What area
Where
is
was
that?
that again?
Red Fox Drive,
Oh, right.
Oh,
Yeah,
Red
like-
Fox?
had two, in the past 2 months, so they probably had 4 in that area in the past year, so.
Speaking of which, I'm gonna go answer the phone, I just heard it ring 3 times, so if you guys need
Probably
anything else, just
be
holler.
by noon, they should have it on,
Oh, wonderful, that's
Okay.
pretty quick.
so.
Okay, sanitary sewer,
No update.
Huh?
No update.
Greg's on by.
he's up to.
Oh, Greg's up there, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I was just on Zoom.
Is that right, Greg?
Yeah, I don't have anything back from Tim McElligott yet. I did send him the information, but I've also sent a bunch of other stuff in that actually had a little bit more pressing deadline. So I think that got back burned a little bit, but I got to get back to him and bring this back to the forefront. So I'll try to make sure we have a better update for the next meeting.
Okay. Well, that went quickly. The ARPA funding, we talked about using that for Cheshire and sewer, going back out to the people in Cheshire and asking them if a number like half of what we had told them before, an annual cost would be more palatable and would they be willing, so we need to get in touch with them sometime soon.
Yeah,
And
we can do the letter. I just.
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to, but-
Do we have a more definitive number? I mean, just to say half.
yeah, well,
That's not gonna.
Greg had put together,
Right, I know he's working on
you
it.
know, it was roughly, he didn't go in and look at current cost of pipe and all of that, but the number came down to it was around $800, wasn't it, Greg? If we used the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it was the higher 800s though, but yeah, say less than 900.
And before it was like 1,800, I think, $150 a month.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
it's like half, so we just want, in order to make it
But
work.
with $1 million from CDBG though.
Right, I mean, that's the question, whether we could get that again. In order to get that answered, we gotta do another income survey, so before we spend the money to do the income survey, it'd be nice to gauge residents' interest in, you know, is this, should we go ahead or not? You know?
So the ARPA funding is a new grant opportunity?
Well, from the American Recovery Program Act, it was passed in DC, we got
And the CD.
we're getting like 1.15 million total. We got half of it already. And we get the other half next summer. And you have to, well, it all has to be spent by what, 2026? You have to make a commitment and define where you're gonna use the money this month, I believe.
They extended that deadline.
Oh, okay.
So I think we have until spring now.
Oh,
But,
okay.
yeah.
So Doug was going to answer with, we intend to use this for a sewer project, out in the, well,
Oh, there you go.
holy cow. That was
Imagine that. I was like,
You
oh,
get
we lost
beamed
track.
down.
Yeah.
Pretty out of your car.
Goodbye, Greg.
It's amazing technology. We just come right through the Zoom.
Yeah.
meeting.
Right. It's a new feature, right?
The portal opened up and spit him out.
Well, it sounds like something you want to jump on, you know, because that's a great opportunity
Yeah,
to do something in Cheshire, man.
yeah. So it's, if we devote the whole thing to it, it should really dramatically lower the cost in Cheshire, and then maybe we could do that program. That was the first on the list of top 3 sewer project areas was Cheshire was number 1, so people just couldn't afford it though, so. But if we get that out, we can gauge their interest and then start really taking a look at it, see what the cost would be.
Yeah, I think after our last public works meeting, we were talking about putting out some correspondence, like sometime after the October meeting or something like that.
Yeah.
And then there's, you know, if the infrastructure bill ever makes it off of Capitol Hill, I mean, maybe combining, who knows, we'll see what would be something there.
I mean, you know, that Cheshire being the new sewer district, one thing is it doesn't qualify for WIA, because WIA is for replacement of aging infrastructures is the primary focus, but hopefully there'll be programs kind of like that through ESC. I just hope that like the money doesn't just end up with RD, because it was RD, then we're, you know, then we can't touch that money. Unless they update their rules. vehicles, who knows, maybe, there's a lot of different things that could be in flux, but I agree with Doug, there should be a lot of money available for infrastructure, projects similar to these.
Okay.
Might wait for Jim to come back. I know.
Capital improvements, road maintenance. We wanted to talk a little bit about that. I mean, if you look at,
It's in the budget.
yeah, I mean, every year we,
Not enough.
not enough. Just moved, kick down the road a bit longer. And, you know, similar to the problem with the water distribution system. I mean, that's, a lot of that's been in the ground over 50 years, and some of that ACP pipe is being attacked, and you have 2 water breaks within 6 weeks or so in the same general area. Over time, that's got to be replaced. And,
Yeah, back in even stuff that's been in the ground only like say 30 years, we're having problems because back in at that time, they used to use core 10 bolts. It's know what core 10 steel is. Yeah, well, that's its corrosion
Yeah,
protection, the fact that
yeah,
it's supposed to
right.
rust over and keep it, but
US Steel.
the ground, soil and water conditions are so aggressive, it's just eating those things. And I'm like, they dig it up and like there's nothing there. It's just gone. So now we use, the blue glows, the chloral, fluoral, either coated bolts, or we use stainless steel as part of our typical for the town. So we'll run into those. And then there, a lot of places are gonna have problems just with copper piping, like the copper service tubing is getting attacked from the outside. So they get a lot of pinholing, particularly because we run at higher pressures, creates a lot of problems. So corrosion is you think a lot of times of corrosion on tankage, right? Our old tank, right? Same thing with the steel tank. You try to prevent corrosion. Even on our new tanks we have, there's cathodic protection systems on both of those. But there wasn't that much thought, I think, way back in the day when it came to water lines going on the ground with the corrosiveness of the soils.
yeah, well, themselves. Remember, I think you sent Jim a paper that was written by somebody, university, someplace, Tennessee, Kentucky, down there.
Yeah, on the AC.
Studied pH and the fact that an ACP pipe and just turns into a kind of a gelatinous mass.
Yeah, the soil will actually leach out the chlorides out of the AC. This is cement, right? So you think it would do the same thing to essentially concrete. Unprotected concrete, it would do the same thing.
And while we're waiting for Jim, just as a reminder, Tuesday night, this coming Tuesday night, is the Farmington Canada water meeting. But Greg, do you have any update on what's going on with that tank on Brick River?
Yeah, we just prepared a draft milestone memo for the bidding schedule, and the plan is to put that out to bid before the end of the year. So I think it's spring construction. Let me just see if I'll text Dave and have him email me that right now.
I know one of the, not really a challenge, but just a little bump in the road is we couldn't get the easements for the expanded construction area, the temporary construction easements from.
Yeah, I think that so we worked with a company for the elevated storage tank, the CBI, because it's very specialized construction. There's probably only like 2 or 3 companies in the Northeast that really do that work. It would have made the construction easier because it gives you more working space around the tank, but they basically said they can do it without it. It's gonna have to cost because they're gonna have a tighter site.
Couldn't negotiate,
We tried, we met multiple times. We actually met out on site with Richards, and Peter sent multiple letters and everything, and then one day Peter called me, he's like, I happened to be driving by and I saw Seth on the tractor. I stopped and talked to him and he said no.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the easements weren't necessarily critical, it just would have saved some money, I mean, we're probably gonna see a, you know, 50 grand bump in our construction costs because of it, but.
But there were also some issues there with the actual site, like the fence was partially on their property in one
Yeah, it's always
spot.
been,
And
which is
then in
strange.
another spot, they were nowhere near the property line, right? So
Right.
it was, so it's kind of corrected some of those other issues also, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, but the plan is to start on that project, next, the upcoming construction season.
Be done by the end of the year next year.
I wanna say that's gonna be more than a year construction.
I think I heard originally like almost 2 years.
I was gonna say it's probably an 18, I would say 18 to 16 months.
That due to the form factor of the
Well,
package, or
I mean,
just the scope of the?
I think it's just a general scope. I mean, you gotta build a concrete pedestal 160 feet up in the air.
That's good.
You're
Yeah.
gonna see it. You're gonna see it for sure.
Oh yeah, this tank is gonna be, yeah, you're gonna see this tank from a lot of places.
I see it from my house, it's 160 feet, it's up there.
160 feet on the ridge line.
And
It'll be there, yeah.
And it's on top of the ridge line up there, so.
And it's a 2 million gallon tank.
Yeah, you might see it from Canada Lake.
So you have to change the airways. We're going up in the airport, right?
Well, they're right, there had to be lights, or no?
Yeah, we had to
Yeah,
put,
yeah.
we had to put the FAA light on top. That was part of their decision. We had to go through that process.
Mercy Foot's gonna have to look out for it, they're always buzzing around it. Current one.
Yeah.
Well, and I know Jim is anxious to redo Brickyard Road, but we keep kicking that down, kicking the can down the road because this tank
Yeah.
project crosses the road 2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
You got the trail.
And then the trail.
that's right.
Anything new in the park, outhouse, as far as the playground?
Not too much. I think that pretty much we've subsided our work over there for the time being. Floyd's got the concrete sidewalk pretty much all around. I'm remaking a grant pitch for the rubberized surfacing, so that we can get the money for the rubberized surfacing through CARES Act money. We have to play all these games with all these grants right now. And then that frees up some money, hopefully, for the construction of pavilion bathrooms.
I noticed, in County Road 16, the county has started the work on drainage up by where Miller's used to be.
Mm-hmm.
They're working up there, they started this past Tuesday. Monday was too rainy, but they got the northbound lane from roughly Coy Road down to roughly where Miller's turnoff was. Got that dug up, and they're going and putting down base now, doing some cross culvert work. But you drive down Westlake Road now, and you see wherever they've got something coming across the road off the hill, there's dotted white lines where they're gonna be going in, apparently replacing a lot of that stuff. So what was it, about 2 years ago,
Yeah,
We
that
met
was,
in here and,
they did the hydraulic study and then,
yeah. So they are following through, so it's,
I know Oksana has shared her concern and frustration that they're proposing to put a 24-inch culvert into her 12-inch. And so water coming onto her property there, and it kind of opens up and daylights right at her septic tank. So,
it's not good.
so hopefully the county's engineers are looking at that stuff.
I know she had a swale across the road, that the water was filling up the swale, it was just, it had to be dredged out. And the county came in and did that. There was one issue, we had a water line that services that fire hydrant there, and that was too high, so they couldn't get under it. And, but she was happy at that point. Now, this thing was,
Yeah,
I remember her mentioning that before, it was still in build.
And then the other thing, just so it's not really completely related to all this, but it is to some, had a lot of complaints in the last 48 hours about the blue-green algae on the lake, all
Oh,
along the west side of the lake.
Front page news today.
Yeah, I didn't see the messenger yet, but I was down at Lowe's, it was Wednesday afternoon, I ran into Keith Kutry down there. And he just come in, you know, from his place, driving along Westlake Road, and he said, yeah, you gotta call Doug or somebody. Kevin Mulvaney, he said, there's a lot of blue green, it looks, he said, close to the shore. So,
Yeah, he's
did
sent me a
you see it down your way, Al?
No, I haven't seen it, right on the west side. I mean,
It
right
was
west
pretty
side.
much all over the whole lake. Yeah.
All the water plants had detox in the groundwater for blue-green algae.
It's the good news, it's October.
Yeah, we're on the tail end of it, so.
The watershed put out, this was actually over at Keith's dock. Keith had sent that to me, but that was pretty much
Yep, I was in
all around the lake. I mean, there was extensive, blue-green algae streaks all over everywhere. I mean, you could really see it. I mean, it was very, very clear.
Yeah, it's very apparent.
Even out in the middle of the lake, Kevin Mulvaney was telling me that even right in the center of the lake, they were finding extensive streaking.
I wonder if it's the higher temperatures are experiencing in September and October.
I was talking to Kevin, we had that ribbon cutting for the Vista project off Jones Road, it's a Green Lake Land Trust, they had to put in trails, you go up Jones Road, and up 3/4 away, it's a dead end, 3/4 away up on the left, there's a nice parking area they constructed. They had ribbon cutting for the trail system, we had the kiosk there and all. And Kevin was there, and I was saying something to Kevin about the amount of foam, because there was a woman there, can't remember her name, she was showing us photographs of the foam.
Lynn Colts.
Yeah, she was in town of Gorham, and
Yeah,
east side.
Watershed Association.
And she had pictures she'd taken that morning, the foam was like a couple feet deep along the shoreline in front of her place. Well, Kevin was saying there's different schools of thought on the origin, why the HAPs are more prevalent now. Like, so one of them is the quagga mussels and zebra mussels. What they're taking in, they'll eat bacteria or whatever, but they spit out the stuff that causes the blue-green algae. They won't eat that, so that put back out. So the concentration of that consequently goes up versus some of the other stuff. He said one of the theories is that, having those infestations, the foam may come from that too. They're not sure, so
Yeah.
the whole thing is just such a
It's a living system, you know?
oh yeah.
When things get out of balance, everything will try to, everything's now trying to seek a new balance, and it's natural selection. So if the zebra mussels or quagga mussels are not eating
Yeah.
the cyanobacteria, then they have a competitive advantage.
Yeah. It's really all these invasive species are
So
screwing up a lot.
I fielded multiple calls, but, and I'll share, Keith texted me this, but he, raised the question, what legislative preventative measures are being taken? And I can tell you that I'm fielding a lot of those types of calls. Relative to
Those actions should be really led by the watershed, because it has to be part of the watershed control program. And I'm thinking primarily from the drinking water side, because Canandaigua Lake is the source of supply for numerous communities.
Well, a single town really can't do. I mean,
Right,
we
exactly.
have so many communities bordering each of these. It's not just Canandaigua Lake.
Right.
Seneca's got
Right.
problems. That
Oh,
one
yeah.
problem, so.
For sure. But it's not, and it's not like, okay, maybe we just have to put sewers down County Road 16 and that solves the drought. It probably doesn't solve the drought, because it still has to do with the amount of phosphorus loading and nitrogen loading that's coming to the lake, and then these other factors, the natural selection. All you may be able to do is to help mitigate, but you're probably never gonna. It's not like we can just eradicate them. There isn't
No,
like
there's no valve you can shut off.
right. There's no valve. It's not like, okay, we can introduce this species because it eats that species. It's
That's not-
there isn't that kind of mechanisms to kind of just make it go away.
I think it's gotta be though, everybody's gotta look at all these things together, because the very first thing the Canandaigua Lake Watershed Council will say to you is, they don't have the legislative authority to make any municipality do anything. Now, they could help lead an effort and say, you should be doing this, you know, and so we had done that, like for instance, with the septic system, and then steep slope protection, those were some of the types of things, right? So, but the town of Canandaigua is the leader on all that stuff. We're still waiting for other municipalities to adopt all the stuff we've already done.
Well, what I've read, that they're discovering this in remote lakes up in Canada and stuff too, so it's not just populated areas where it's experiencing.
Well, the council has to be the lead on it, just like the Dr. Memorial one, you know?
Exactly, yeah. They could start the, getting people together to discuss this, but phosphorus and nitrates and those kind of things, I mean, some of that comes from farming.
Yes.
And
Correct.
we encourage, you know, in our comprehensive plan, the preservation of ag lands and the active use of ag lands. And, you know, you got some of these forces are kind of opposed to one another, trying to find some balance where, but my conversation, I had this with Kevin a few times now. He said, there isn't one thing that we can point at and say, if you do this,
Right.
it's not, there isn't that valve, it's not. It's all, everything.
It's all multiple factors, you know, it's every study, multiple factors, you know?
Yeah. Go, clean all the invasive species out of the lake bottom. Okay.
Well, muscle harvest.
Well, you want me to check, see if Jim's coming back?
Yeah, if he may have.
They left.
As he said,
Did Jim take off, Keaton?
One of the sidebar tasks. Are we still doing public work?
I guess Jim took off. so-
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think Any, you know, just the new water tank, you know what level they're at now?
They're probably like 45 feet. We kind of paused, so we've spent the past 2 weeks or so troubleshooting our new PR or two new PRD vaults and hot box. And we've eliminated the State Route 21 vault over there by New Horizons, or the hot box that's there. That one, we basically created a dead end in our system overnight, and then we tracked it. So that one held, the other side didn't. So it looks like the problem's on Cheshire Road. And there's a strong likelihood it's the insert valve that we put on that ACP line. Is it's a non-standard, well, not that insert valves are really standard, but this one's a really different one because it was a larger diameter, but also to fit on AC. This one, like when you turn the nut, it actually expands essentially a plug to create the valve. So it's, normally it's a resilient wedge where the wedge comes down and seats up in a standard valve and shuts things off. This one is actually compressing to the outside or to the ID of the ACP pipe to cause a shut off. Well, consequently, I'm like, really have to crank on it to try to get it to close. And somewhere in here, there's how much is too much pressure before we crack the pipe. So, but we were able to diagnose because of the information with all the new telog information. We were able to basically say, okay, look, there's a small leak someplace. Either it's in the PRV valves or it's on the shut off valves. Because what was happening is at 11:30 at night, the pressure was increasing, and then at 4:30 in the morning, it would immediately drop back to where it needed to be. So there has to be some amount of ability for the high pressure to leak into the low pressure. And while the demand's low, that's when the pressure builds up. And then as soon as the demand came back onto the system, it would drop back down to where we wanted it to be. So initially, everyone was going to say, oh, PRV valves are messed up. But that's not it does not appear to be the case. So I think we're going to have to relook at how we did Middle Cheshire Road, that vault and that bypass. We might have to do something different. We may have to, we may just have to dig it up and cut and cap that line
force the water through the PRVs.
Hmm.
That will allow us to continue raising the tank levels.
And listening to you on the technology side of things, it really is amazing to me, the technology advancements the town of Canandaigua seriously has made even in the last 2 years. I mean, there's that, even though it sounds trivial, even like our phone systems and stuff with the upgrades that we've done now, somebody can call in and, like for instance, I was at the city hall the other day in a meeting that somebody called me and they really needed something, it was an emergency situation, but they needed to transfer them to Jim. I'm able to transfer them directly from my cell phone through the app, and I can see whether or not
Yeah,
Jim's
that's
on the
crazy.
phone, and I mean, there's just so many of these things. I mean, it's really, we've made amazing technological advances in the last 24 months.
Well, these meters that are telling units that you bought really helping,
Well, we would probably spend months trying to diagnose what this
chasing
problem
it
is.
around.
Yeah, I mean, I could reasonably say that if we didn't have this information, it would take a lot longer to get to a solution than the couple weeks that it has. So, and the operators have been great, Mike and those guys, every time I call them up, we talk and, I'm like, here, try this, they're, Johnny on the spot, they just go take care of it, so, it's been a team process for sure, but we're getting there.
So one of the things we might put on our agenda next month is just start talking about our priorities for the infrastructure bill. That thing's gonna happen. So I think we really ought to be looking at, what are our top priorities for that bill if we get a chunk of money.
I would suggest to have, like drainage projects, road projects, culvert projects, water projects, sewer, have categories, because we don't know what this infrastructure bill is gonna target.
Yeah.
So I would probably try to have, whatever, 3-4 projects under multiple different, it could be sidewalks, it could be complete streets, it could be, like I said, culvert work, whatever. Just have a few of those kind of identified roughly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have, in the sewer area, we have the top 3 that we're looking at,
Yeah, you have a sewer and a
We have
water master
water
plan, so you have
master
things to help you there.
Take some pieces out there.
Well, the other good thing that we did, remember, we were working on at the beginning of COVID, and we were doing it remotely, but we actually have all of our fixed assets. So we have an inventory of all of our roads that are labeled in our fixed assets, and then there's the Cornell Roads program that Jim has, the grading system, but then that corresponds to a grade that we've assigned. So we kind of know where the improvements are needed on all those. So it's almost like we have a list. It's just a matter of looking at it and making sure that the ones that have the lowest score are the priority to.
So you just might brainstorm and think about it, because lots of times that money, it's the people who spend it
Yeah.
get the money.
That's right. They wanna know they
Yeah.
can do it.
And
That's right.
yeah, and normally these programs, particularly when they're stimulus type programs, they want you to be able to utilize those funds in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
So they're not gonna allow you to like long range plan and, have something 6 years down the road. They're gonna wanna see you have something, in probably a 3-year window.
But the one thing that we're running into it with playground, we're running into it with all this federal money, is NEPA.
Yeah.
And so we gotta make sure that we play by their rules. We
NEPA
can't
is-
start
yeah.
until we,
NEPA is like it's national level seeker, and there's additional organizations that we have to correspond with. There's the tribal coordination that has to happen, and then there's like certain windows that we have to give for the coordination, and then there's a big report that gets assembled. So we have to do
MRV work is what it is.
Yeah.
Don't think we're
But it's the RD makes you do it, so we've gotten really familiar with doing the NEPA work. EFC just makes you have to get the certification, for EFC, and so a little bit easier.
But we're gonna have to do that even like with ARPA money. We're gonna have to do that with Cheshire Sewers when we get to that point.
Right.
And all that stuff.
Might pay for your stormwater management.
Possible.
Because you had that, you know what your priorities were for stormwater.
I guess we're done with this agenda, so we can
You wanna exit?
close the public portion.